Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. Today we're going to talk books with Jane Danielson from Eagle Harbor Book Company. I'd like to start, though, by acknowledging that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, our neighbors, the Suquamish, who have lived on these lands and plied these waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We are grateful for their stewardship and teaching us to be better stewards of these lands and waters. Also, a tip of the hat to Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which sponsors Something to Talk About. They offer independent living and assisted care and memory care as well up on Rolling Bay. To learn more or get a tour, ask for Celia or Jamie when you call 206 594 1010. Jane, I want to thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us today and talk about some of the books that Bainbridge Islanders are reading, some of the titles that are coming out soon. And this is often a time when you're really looking for a little help with book shopping because you're not just buying for yourself, you're thinking about others. So your guidance is appreciated. Jane, are you there? I saw her there for a minute. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump in. You mentioned your land acknowledgement, and I just want to mention that this is the month, November every year is the month in which we celebrate Indigenous peoples and Alaskan Native Americans. And so I want to start out with some Indigenous titles just to kick us off, and there'll be a few more sprinkled in. But the first one is called The Berry Pickers. This is just out in paperback by Amanda Peters. And this is a story that starts with a tragedy of a missing child. It follows some indigenous Native Americans in the Northeast and back in the mid-century of the 20th century, 1960s, and a child goes missing during one of the berry picking episodes and what follows. So it starts with a tragedy that affects a lot of lives along the way. And then a very interesting conclusion. And so I would say this is a good choice for if you want to break out a little bit of your reading habits. Check out Amanda Peters. It's just a very satisfying novel. And I'll also mention where they last saw her. I just finished this book by Marcy Rendon. She's in part of the Ojibwe tribe. You'll know that tribe from some of Louise
Louise,
Erdrich's books.
yeah.
Yeah, Louise Erdrich. And so, and this is a mystery about some of the missing women in that area. And it's a very, very tense and interesting mystery. I would highly recommend this for somebody who wants to discover somebody new. And finally, this is not American indigenous population. It's northern Sweden, and it follows the Sami tribe. And this is going back in time, generations back in time. It's called Aidnan, and it's by Linnea Axelson, and it follows the Sami people, a family through numerous generations. It's told in verse. It's beautifully told in verse. And at first, the writing, is a little hard to follow, but very, very quickly you start reading in verse and feeling like it's the perfect way to have written this story. It's quite gorgeous. And then
That would also be a good thing for like reshifting your brain a little bit and taking a book in a new direction.
Yes, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's I think that the population of people used to be called the Laplanders, and that is now considered a derogatory term, and so they are the Sami people, and again northern Sweden, and so it's got the Scandinavian feel, but much more raw and rugged than we're used to. And then I'll jump into some fiction. Richard Powers has come up with another brilliant novel, The Playground, and this one has to do with underwater and AI and parallel storylines that anyone who's read Richard Powers knows that he starts with these parallel storylines and they all sort of weave together in a brilliant way. there are themes of, again, AI, climate crisis, the natural environment, and just amazing character and plot development.
Is he's the one who wrote the Overstory?
He wrote the Overstory.
That's
Yeah,
the one I've read, I guess, yeah.
and that's
Who
incredible. That one's
yeah.
incredible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we come to The Mighty Red again. So we were just talking about Louise Erdrich. The Mighty Red is her newest one, and she goes back to this one is the population is in northern Dakota, the North Dakota, in the Red River Valley, and there's a wedding that's at the center of this story, and of course. Just sort of the portrait of the people who are at the wedding, the lives, the drama that plays out, and she often finds a way to tie in contemporary themes into her books in a way that is quite compelling and quite good, and I read everything she writes because I think she's
It's
amazing.
true. Exactly, and she writes so quickly and yet so well. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I loved this book. um Rafe is not with us today because for those of you who know Rafe, he has moved on to third place books. So our loss is their game, but we still have some of his book recommendations, and I know that he's very popular with everyone. And so I wanted to include one of his recommendations, and I've read this as well. This is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shah. I'm going to say it wrong, Shavak. And this one is it's it's the language more than anything, but it does follow people throughout time along one particular river. It starts with a drop of water and goes into this incredible saga through time, and it's just a work of art. It's just beautiful writing, a beautiful storytelling, very compelling, and brilliant concept. He started with just this one drop of water and produces this incredible novel. So highly recommend. This one
Okay.
is a signed edition. So yay. And Elizabeth Strout, very, very popular as always. I love her writing. She's returned to the characters of Olive Kittredge, Olive and Lucy, but this can be read as a standalone novel. You don't need to have read the earlier ones. Um, but once you read any of her books, you're going to want to read them all, and this one is no exception. I would highly recommend this one. And then a very sweet one I love, especially in times when we all could use a little more kindness in our lives, and maybe that's right about now. The Full Moon Coffee Shop is a Japanese novel with cats. Those are the best kind of Japanese novels by Mai Mochizuki. And this is about a mysterious coffee shop that comes in, only appears on the night of each full moon, and it's run by talking cats. And anyone who comes into this coffee shop ends up finding exactly what they need, whether they knew it or not. It's a beautiful, beautiful novel.
Sounds delightful,
Yeah, it's a
and,
very
what a great sense of humor to set it up that way.
yeah,
And of course, there should be no childless cat lady without it.
yes, exactly. For all the cat ladies out there. I'm going to move into historical fiction, and I'll mention first Kristen Hanna's book, The Women. It's set, for anyone who hasn't had a copy, in Vietnam. Not a lot of novels can pull that off very well. Carl Marlantes comes to mind. This one is called The Women for Good Reason. This is about the nurses of Vietnam, and their story hasn't been told, and this is getting huge acceptance across the country with women who were there and who appreciate the fact that their story hadn't been told. Um, Again, a brilliant plot, characters, a lot of Christian does make you look at some things that are unpleasant and difficult. And yet this comes off as an absolutely beautiful book. So I highly recommend The Women. And we will have signed copies. Kristen's coming in early December or maybe around the 10th to sign copies, and we'll have many copies for gifts for Christmas. That. This book came out last year. It's called The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. And this just came out in paperback recently. It's gone right to the bestseller. list. It is a historical fiction about a woman named Martha Ballard, who was a midwife in the times of Paul Revere, during the Revolutionary days. And she is a very strong woman who leads her town when bad forces have entered this little village. Um, the day after the river freezes, and they're in for a long cold winter, and some real shenanigans going on in the town. And this woman, because of her medical intuition and her sense and the trust the town has with her, she's following a murder. And but her whole family and the whole village gets involved. It's quite wonderful.
And that you say it's historical fiction, so it's
Yeah,
rooted in a real event.
yes. Martha Ballard is a woman from those days who actually left her diary behind, and it is in a museum now. But this Ariel has done some research and has fictionalized her life with a murder that happened in the area, and one in which maybe her son might have been implicated. So she really had reason to solve this murder. Um, and I'll just mention Forgotten on a Sunday. This takes us back to so those of you who have ever been in the bookstore and have encountered me there will know that I will try to put a Valerie Perrin book in your hand. My favorite is Freshwater for Flowers. And this book is recently published, but was actually published overseas before Freshwater for Flowers. It's another gorgeous look at people in a little French village. And this follows a young woman who's working in a care home and befriends a centenarian, someone who over 100 years old. Um, and again, there's in all of her books, there's charm, there's gorgeous writing, there's beautiful characters, and there's a hidden story within the story. They're brilliant, and I highly recommend this one as well.
Just who to get that for. I'll
Yeah,
make a
oh, it's
note.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Yeah, I read everything she writes. Um, I'm moving to mysteries and suspense. This is Carla's Choice is by Nick Harkaway, and some of you may know that he is the son of John le Carré, and he is a novelist in his own right. He writes a lot of suspense and spy thrillers of his own, but in this case, he's returning to some of the characters from his father's book, namely, oh, um, am I got it here? Um, anyway, some of the main character who's in his spy dramas, and the nemesis who's there as well. It's a Cold War espionage spy thriller. And Smiley, of course, George Smiley, and the counterpart, whose name is Carla, and they both make new appearances in this book, and it feels very much like one of John le Carré's books. He's very followed in the style of his father. This book is very, very good and very thrilling, and especially for those who love those books. Silverview is one of le Carré's books that is still on the bestseller list here. So this would be a popular choice as well. And now we'll move to a little more fun mystery. Richard Osman, who writes the Thursday Murder Club series, which is super fun, has moved to a new series. This is the first one called We Solve Murders. And it's about a woman who's hired to be a bodyguard or a protector of wealthy clients, and suddenly she realized she's being implicated in some very gruesome murders. And her father-in-law is a former village detective in a little British village, and she calls on him, and together they figure out what's going on and how things are, how to solve it, and to whom they should be focused on. And I would also say that there's some hilarious characters in this one that make it as much fun as the Thursday Murder Club. Very different feel, though. This one's a little more gritty than that one. So, um, and then this one is super fun, The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. It is a mystery about an artist who's very, very famous, has a huge following, but one of her sculpture pieces, gets pulled from an exhibition because they determined that it looks like it contains a human rib bone. And so it is not only a mystery, but also an art, sort of a thrilling art story. And it's fun. You'll learn a lot about art that you didn't know in the art world, but also there's this wonderful mystery and this kind of wacky characters that, sort of um, interesting characters that you'll encounter in this one. So this one's super fun.
Does sound interesting. And
Good. Yeah.
it has this whole other area of interest. So if mysteries don't grab you immediately, they will by and by because you're interested in the art world.
Our world, and it's definitely, and it's a well-written mystery. It plot, moves right along, but also it's got this, the cult following and with artists and how they become famous, and then there's the mystery of about this bone. Could it have been her ex-husband, who went missing? So, and I'm going back to another spy drama. Ava Glass has written a series with a young British spy named Emma Makepeace. This is book number 3. I've read all 3 of them, and I don't think you need to read them in order. In fact, book 2 doesn't. It seems like a totally, completely different kind of a novel. But she's a spy in Great Britain, and they know of an assassination at a G7 summit that's coming up. They're not quite sure who the target's going to be and how it's going to happen. And it's a race against time. They only have a few days to solve it. So high tension, high drama. Who can you trust? All of these things with a good spy drama. And her novels are set in contemporary times. So there's cameras and AI and other things involved that bring you right up to modern day dramas. So I did like this one very much. And finally, I'm just going to hold up one of Mick Herron's books, Slow Horses. For those of you who are following the series on TV, on Netflix, which is a very fun series. Gary Oldman plays the kind of a slob of a main detective. But they're on their own. If you're not a fan of Netflix, this is a very, very good British police procedural kind of books, with a cast of sort of castaway policemen who've all been in trouble for one reason or another, and in their own division, and they stumble onto these cases that are quite intriguing. So this is a good one. And then I'm going to move to poetry, and I'll go very quickly through these. I'm not sure how many poetry lovers, but those who love the spoken word, I think we have some of the best. We have one of the best right here in our store. Erin Malone is one of our booksellers. She came to us from Queen Anne Books. What can I say about Erin? She's formerly, she was a bookseller there. She's the former she's been a finalist for the National Poetry Series. She's been awarded numerous prizes, including the Coniston Prize, Radar Poetry, the Robert Crassley Memorial Prize. She used to be the former editor of Poetry Northwest. Many of you follow that magazine, and she's very tied into the local poetry scene.
So where are you? Another poetry book.
Yes, poetry. So I'll just talk quickly about Billy Collins. Of course, everybody knows Billy Collins. He's been here on Bainbridge numerous times. And, he has a lot of genius, but also wonder and mystery in his poems. It sort of exposes wonderful things that we don't always look at directly. And I just love Billy Collins. I love his voice and everything. So that's fun. And then our favorite Margaret Atwood, we have signed copies of her newest collection. It's not a new collection. It's from like 1961 through 2023 of her poems. It's a very dense volume, and it's got just about everything there. We have some signed copies, not many, but this is a really great book to have on your shelf and to tuck into time and time again. And then I just want to go on to some nonfiction, and I'm going to start with some Pacific Northwest books. This one is the field notes from a fungi forager. There are so many mushroom hunters here in the Pacific Northwest, and this is a really fun book. It's in our holiday catalog. It's got wonderful illustrations, great prose with all of these various different kinds of fungi. The subtitle is An Illustrated Journey Through the World of Pacific Northwest Mushrooms. So those of you who are mushroom people, you have one more book to add to your collection.
Looks like
Uh,
it's beautiful to look at whether you're going to actually trust your mushroom hunting aspects or not.
yes, I know, and it's also it'll make it just a great gift. It's gifty, it's beautiful. Yeah, so it's a fun one, and especially if somebody's new to the Northwest. Very well. There's another one called Drink the Pacific Northwest, the ultimate guide to breweries, distilleries, wineries, and cideries here. And it has recommendations, it has actual locations where you find them, what they're known for. So those of you who like to do local vacations, this is a fun one to have on your shelf so that wherever you are, you'll be able to find the best libations in yeah. Um, and I just need to talk quickly about the secret history of Bigfoot. There are so many Bigfoot, Sasquatch fans, people who are fascinated by Sasquatch. And this book, the author, John O'Connor, went to trekked through the Pacific Northwest forests with Sasquatch hunters, went to strange, what do they call them? Cryptozoology conferences where he met all kinds of cast of characters. So this has a really fun, zany people that are very much interested in Bigfoot. I know from personal experience, some of like Jonathan Evison is possibly not a believer, but someone who is fascinated by the concept of Sasquatch. And we've often talked about what a novel would look like that had Sasquatch in it.
Well, that's now I've got another person I absolutely know what to get for.
Yeah,
We've got Forgotten on Sunday and the search the secrets of the Bigfoot.
yeah, super fun. Um, there's a new book. I don't have it to hold up because it's on reorder, but the Pacific Northwest Disaster Guide by Henry Latourette Miller. With all of the bomb cyclones and atmospheric rivers and more dramatic storms than we're having than in the past, this is something that is presented in graphic form, a graphic novel form, and but it has a ton of information and it follows specific disasters and how they got their way. But it has information for everyone, and it's going to be a fun one.
Repeat the
And now
title,
moving,
please.
it's called
Repeat the
the Pacific Northwest Disaster Guide by Henry Latourette Miller. And
thing.
it's a good one. Yeah, we sold out quickly and have more coming. Eric Larson has a new one this year, The Demon of Unrest. This one takes us to the dawn of the Civil War. The KKK, there's a woman who's deaf, triggers some real drama within the KKK and is responsible. It is the thing that sort of um, uh, takes care of the situation, although not completely, as we know. But this is another one of Eric Larson's masterpiece history books that reads almost like fiction. I love Timothy Egan, and this one is uh, The Fever in the Heartland. Again, this is again about the KKK and our sort of difficult history there. It takes place in Indiana, and it just presents a rather disturbing look at some events that went on there. And finally, I'm going to, most of you know about the 1619 project. There's a very new illustrated guide, again, written by Nicole Hannah-Jones, and the New York Times Magazine has provided all kinds of historical photos and things, actual things that happened that led to Hannah-Jones's book. And it's a very, very big, beautiful, difficult to read, but important to read edition of the 1619 project. And because I like pictures, my brain sometimes works visually better than with lists. The Atlas of Finance is a history from ancient coins in the ancient world to Bitcoin and everything in between. And again, it's full of charts and graphs and illustrations, and the design work in here is absolutely beautiful to help you understand how money has moved through our lives since the dawn of time, since we had having
The Atlas of Finance. Okay.
the Atlas financed by Darius Wojcik. It looks like a Polish name, anyways, but it's absolutely a gorgeous book, and I've already had this on my list for a few people. And I don't know how our time is doing. I'm going to move quickly into biographies because there's a few fun ones that have come out this year that may be of interest to you. This one, my husband and I are fans of anything Dorothy Parker. So this one is Dorothy Parker in Hollywood. Many of you know Dorothy Parker um, from her days as a journalist. She has many quotes that are hilarious and wonderful. Um, uh, she says one of her most famous quotes is, "If you have nothing nice to say, come sit next to me." And you know, this sort of snide comments like that. She was a writer for many years, and she was also a respected poet, a screenwriter. She wrote the first screenplay for A Star Is Born. She was a civil rights activist. She left her entire state to the NAACP, so she put her money where her mouth was. And there's all kinds of details of her time in Hollywood, and she had a complicated relationship with her husband involving lots of alcohol and drama. But it's a very fun one, especially if you're fans of Dorothy Parker and her hilarious writing in ways. Um, the Kingmaker is by Sonia Purnell, and you know her from her book The Woman of No Importance. That was an absolutely stunning book that came out a few years ago. This one is about Pamela Digby Churchill Harriman, Pamela Harriman, and she was the daughter-in-law of Winston Churchill. She was very important in getting Roosevelt to agree to enter World War II to support the British effort. She later became the ambassador to France in her late life and in the Clinton years. And she was personal friends with, of course, Churchill and all his pals, the Kennedys, lots of others. And so this is a wild story and a lot of backstory to the major events that we didn't know much about. There was a book some years ago by Lynn Olson called Citizens of London that also talked about that period of time, and Pamela Harriman was featured in that book as well. So I've always been intrigued by her then. Ina Garten, the wonderful cookbook writer and wife of Jeffrey, who she loves to talk about her husband Jeffrey, has a new memoir. So there is a recipe or two in here, but it's really her memoir about how her rise from the corporate world in New York to owning this bakery to becoming a TV sensation for her books. And it's called Be Ready When Luck Happens by Ina Garten. And so it's sort of, you know, you feel like you're sitting with a wonderful batch of perfect brownies and a lovely cup of tea as you're reading this book. I love that one. Contemporary books now, and I'm going to start with Ta-Nehisi Coates, who you may know from his former letter to my son, and he has written this book called The Message. And this book took a different direction than what he intended it to take. He was traveling, he was writing about race and politics, and he was going to Africa, to the South, and then he ended up in Gaza. And when he got to Gaza, this was before the massacre happened, before the tragedy a year ago in October. But he was already very struck by the oppression of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And he ended up, a large portion of the book goes that direction, and it's his insights and his a different look at things with his own background as a Black American man. And so this one is well worth reading. It's a small book, like his other one, and easy to digest, and an important message. And I just love his writing and his perspective. So I would say this is a timely one as well.
Agreed. Agreed. He's definitely worth paying attention to.
Yes. Yes. Timothy Snyder, another person who's, his former tiny little book on tyranny. He now has one on freedom. He was very, very vocal over the last year during the lead up to the election. He's coming with a new wake up call on this one. And he's very concerned that we've lost the sight of what freedom actually is. What is the real meaning of freedom? And he draws on values that are championed by the left and the right, to bring a little more common sense and sanity to what we have come to know as freedom and what may be lost in the near future. So this is a good one. You may have seen him on lots of TV appearances this year, or if you follow him on social media, I also highly recommend that. And then to also bring a little more sanity into your life, this new one by Oliver Burkeman is called Meditation for Mortals. And it's written by a self-help skeptic who thinks who's trying to get us to the best way for self-help. He's sort of a self-help skeptic, but he believes in taking care of yourself, and he believes the best way to do that is to unplug, to sit back, to go slow, not to always be going for the super achievement, but to go slow, be considerate, and really look at what you're doing. And so he thinks that we'd all be happier and more productive if we actually did less. And this is just a great book for those of you who want to reconsider, take time to reconsider things. This is a short, easy, and wonderful book to read and to begin to follow. And you can do it in little pieces, or you can read it right on through. And finally, I found a little book this year, and it is tiny. This is a little book by Adam Gopnik. You may know him as a writer for The Reporter. This book is called All That Happiness Is, and it's a look at what brings contentment. And it's the difference between accomplishment and achievement. Achievement is something that we do for work or for our careers or to better ourselves, or maybe in the young half of our life, whereas accomplishment is something. I use the example, my husband at the age of, in his late 70s, has taken up piano lessons. He had a few lessons as a child, but it never left him. And now he's 80 and he's in his third year with piano lessons, and he's perfecting these pieces. And in this book, Adam talks about his own work with the guitar. And it might be writing for other people, or pottery, or something totally different, hiking or whatever, but something that gives you pleasure and joy and gives you a strong sense of accomplishment, but not necessarily achievement. You're not doing this for someone else. You're doing this for yourself. It's an absolutely gorgeous little book. I think the Beatles are in there. There, a lot of contemporary touch points in our culture are in here. But it's tiny, great for the stocking, great for that person who may have read everything but hasn't needs this new long form essay.
Yeah, well, and of course he's a delight to read. I know
Yeah.
I catch him in the New Yorker Talk of the Town all the time, and occasionally he writes for that longer pieces too.
Yes,
So
I love Gopnik. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Now on to cooking and cookbooks, because 'tis the season for cookbooks. This one is part cookbook, part memoir. This is Stanley Tucci, who we love. This book, it came to us with a giant cutout of Stanley, which we have in our window, and we'll be giving him away this coming Saturday at Small Business Saturday. We've had
he
so many
shocked me when I
requests.
walked by the other day. It was like, "There's a man in the." No, it's not.
Yeah,
It's a cutout.
and it's Stanley. Everybody wants him. Everybody's come in and said, "Can we have him?" And so we've got a little contest going. But this book on its own, if you've watched him on TV, if you've connected with him through his books and his work in the movies or whatever, this is like you're there right with him with the meals that he ate every year. There are recipes sprinkled through, but it's really about his connection with food, his long-term connection with food, his travel, and how he likes to engage with food, and just basically what he ate. It's just his daily musings on all of that. Um, Many of you know Renee Erickson or have been to her restaurants in Seattle. Um, and she has a new cookbook out called Sunlight and Breadcrumbs. It's a little hard to see. Um, she realized as she was becoming more and more successful and opening more and more restaurants that she loved that, and they were all successful. Her recipes are brilliant, but she was losing her creative side. She had gone to school as an art major and did a lot with ceramics and various forms of watercolor and art, and then she didn't want to lose that. And so she sort of put herself back into that with some drawings. And, she just started going back to her artwork. And so within the book, there are lovely recipes. Also, her artwork is sprinkled through here. And the subtitle is Making Food with Creativity and Curiosity. These are doable recipes. I know her restaurants seem fancy and complex, but these recipes are things that you can do. So this is one I highly recommend, Pacific Northwest um, restaurateur. And another person from the Pacific Northwest, but no longer in the Pacific Northwest, is Kat Bood. She came from Bainbridge Island in 2010. So 15 years ago, 14, she moved to France, Normandy, where she found a ramshackle old farm with her family, and it was overrun with rabbits. So they called it Rabbit Hill Farm. And she began doing classes on creativity. They fixed up the place into a beautiful chateau and farm, and they do cooking classes, and she leads guided tours of the area, and she's totally immersed herself into that culture. And she's written this absolutely gorgeous cookbook. She was here in the bookstore recently. This is just an absolute beautiful cookbook in the French way of cooking. So lots of whole foods, good foods, fresh foods. It's lovely. I can't talk about cooking without the latest Half-Baked Harvest. Many of you know these Half-Baked Harvest cookbooks by Tegan Gerard, and it's filled with absolutely yummy food. And in this case, this is quick and cozy. So these are things you can do in half an hour in your kitchen when you don't know what's for dinner. So this is a really, as with all her others, very good. And
Triage the refrigerator. What have we got here?
yes, yeah, I love doing that. Yeah. And Stephen Colbert and his wife Evie have put together a cookbook that the origins came from COVID when they couldn't go anywhere and they were stuck together with their family and their kids. And they took up cooking and they just ended up with this, funny. Stephen Colbert is wonderful. His wife seems delightful in this book. And funny backstory, his wife in high school dated the father of one of our booksellers who was here for a while. So we got a little backstory about Stephen Colbert, but it's just a very fun cookbook. It's a lot of Southern recipes. There's things like pork and catfish and lots of chicken and things, but it's a fun cookbook and easy to do. And now I'm going to reach way over and get my last stack of books. And I thought, because of the season, we should look at things that are good for gift giving. And first, I'll start with a couple of nature lover books. This one, again, very gifty, gorgeous book with beautiful illustrations. This is called The Universe in Verse. It's 15 portals to wonder through science and poetry. So this is a look at lots of different kinds of um, scientific musings with poetry, and it's an anthology with many famous poets, including Emily Dickinson, Maya Angelou, more contemporary poets. And so it's absolutely beautiful artwork. It's illustrated by Ofra Amit, who I don't know who that is, but I can tell you that the illustrations are absolutely beautiful, and it's a gorgeous anthology of poetry. Very nice for a gift. Going back to Indigenous books, Robin Wall Kimmerer, the author of, oh my gosh, I've just Braiding Sweetgrass, has written this new book called The Serviceberry, and it's all about the bush, the shrub called a serviceberry. In Canada, they call it the Saskatoon berry, and it's it's and it's a role in the lives and culture of indigenous people, as well as nature and animals and birds, it's a and it's a short form, unlike braiding sweetgrass, which is something you dip into here and there, and just go return to from time to time. Um, this one is it's the subtitle is called Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World, and it's about sustainability. This plant, I guess a symbiotic relationship with people, with animals, and with the plant all together that keeps it going. And it's told in her beautiful prose.
Yeah, eat that turkey. Well, sort of like an example of many of the things that braiding sweetgrass touches on. This is like one metaphor or one example of how that works.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And so,
We love
and I
that
have
book.
a
We
service.
read it. It was a B.I. Reed's book, The Kimmerer
Oh,
Braiding
yes.
Sweetgrass, and we read it here at the Senior Community
Oh,
Center. We'll
right.
have to think about maybe we want to do that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tiny one and it's easy to read and fast. And I will also, in the natural world, Amy Tan, who you know from The Kitchen Daughter, anyway, or all of her many books, The Toilet Club. Um, this is The Backyard Bird Chronicles. This is a nonfiction. This is her. She has, I think she's a long-term sufferer of Lyme disease and is less active than she once was. And she has become a birder. And she's become a birder in a big way. She's actually on the board now of oh my gosh, the American Bird Conservancy, and this book is about her diaries and her writings about the birds that she's become quite a birder, and these are the birds that she loves. It's illustrated by David Sibley throughout, and so there's his lovely books, and his contribution to this book have been incredibly important, and so it's a collaboration, an absolutely gorgeous book for the birders in your life. And her writing, of course, comes through as well. Uh, and now I'm going to move to humor. I just have a couple of humor books. Again, we've talked about Adam Gopnik in the New Yorker. This is your caption has been selected. It's about Lawrence Wood, who wrote this, won the caption contest for in the New Yorker cartoons at the back of the magazine. Every week they have the contest caption this picture, and he won the most captions of anyone. And so it's a look at that whole look at the cartoons, the various artists, the stories, and the contest itself, and it's so fun. I mean, you just love all those cartoons, and the backstories are here, so that's a super fun one. And this one is called Obituary, the Big Hot Book of Death. And this was it started with a couple of friends, Spencer Henry and Madison Rays, and they would send each other. They had this habit of sending each other the most obscure and unusual obituaries they would find in the newspapers and in their daily wanderings. And so they started a podcast together of these things, which is quite funny. And this book is sort of comes out of that podcast.
Okay. And what's next, Jane?
Okay, so now I'm just in the final little small stack of books about books that are very, very good for gifting when you're not quite sure what else to give. These are some really great choices. Many of you remember The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. That was a lovely little fable told in graphic form with very simple illustrations. Yeah. This is Trevor Noah, who you will remember from his memoir Born a Crime, and his years on both the Daily Show and the Daily Show. And he's written a fable called Into the Uncut Grass. This is somewhere between The Boy, the Fox, the Mole, and the Horse, and maybe the Tao of Pooh. I would say, for those who know that book, it is also The Little Prince comes to mind with this one, with its illustrations throughout, and it's a fable that is meant for adults, but children would love it as well. It's a beautiful book to read aloud, and the reason I say Pooh is because he's got a little bear, Um, but it's a book that is in a magical world, sort of in the shadow of this boy's home. Um, but he discovers the lessons here that he discovers in his journey in this magical land uh, relate to sharing and caring and connection and finding peace when things are not exactly going right. And it's an absolutely beautiful little gift book, very similar to that The Boy, the Fox, the Mole, and the Horse in its format. And it's Trevor Noah. So I just think this is just an absolutely gorgeous book, very fun. Susanna Clark, who is known for Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and her magnificent book, Piranesi, which I wish everybody in the world would read because I want to talk to everyone about it. This is her new book called The Wood at Midwinter. She's going back to the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Her books are getting smaller. If you know Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, it's about 3 inches thick. Piranesi is a normal sized novel, and this is a tiny little novella, and it's got beautiful illustrations throughout the book as well, and it's just a gifty little book for those who love that world and that writing. Um, and it has a girl who can talk to animals and is at her happiest when she's in the woods talking to animals, but then something happens to change things, and so it's got a little bit of drama there. Brightly Shining is about two sisters in, I want to say, the Norwegian Christmas Tale, and two sisters and the sort of hardship and but there's hardship and there's hope in this novel, and it's a beautiful little Christmas novel. Again, a short one and little novella, and there's a lot of mystery and a lot of wonder and a lot of hope in this book. So it's a lovely one. Um, Amanda Gorman has written a guided journal. Kind of see because it's embossed. The words are embossed, and it's called "For There Is Always Light" by Amanda Gorman, and it's a guided journal. So it's for people, especially. I like to give journals to teenagers when the parents are not quite sure what to get for a teen, but anyone really who does just daily writings. She's got some prompts that are based on her inaugural poem, um, but it's also just a lot of room for your own thoughts that come to you after reading her writing. So this is a nice one as a gift. And I'm going to finish with a Jolly Holly Christmas novel called The 12 Dogs of Christmas by Susan Wakes, who lives here on the island. We love Susan. She was part of their recent book festival. And she's written a story about a woman who, it starts out a little sad with a woman whose marriage has just ended um, when she discovers that her husband has been unfaithful. And she discovers that because the dog was rushed to the hospital with a problem, and it turns out he ate a pair of panties that turned out not to be hers. So it starts out with kind of disaster and humor, but it ends up her leaving Texas to help transport some rescue dogs way up to I want to say Vermont. Yeah, she's way up in the New England, and she has to help send all these dogs up there. And of course, there's a hunky fireman and a village, very much like the Bing Crosby movie and Danny Kaye, the White Christmas, where there's a production in the lodge, and it's going to save the town, and these dogs are in the background of everything, and it's an absolute Christmas delight. So
Great.
that is it.
Well, that is quite a bit. Thank you. That you have given us a whole range of wonderful books to look for, and I appreciate you taking the time to put this list together and then take the time to talk us through it. It was wonderful.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm here most days, so you guys know where to find me if you need even more.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
to Eagle Harbor Books. We love having your lively and talented staff helping us this time of year and all year long. So, and I might mention you're also a one of the Fob Friday supporters of the Senior
Yeah,
Community Center,
yeah.
which means that if you happen to purchase your gifts on Friday and show your tag, you'll get 10% off.